I think we're just about ready to get started, so if you could find your seat. We're going to get started in about 10 seconds. If you could please find your seat. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome everyone to Irvin High School and the Irvin feeder pattern this evening. I want to welcome all of you. My name is Diana Saavedra, and I'm the proud superintendent of the El Paso Independent School District. It's such an honor and a privilege to be leading this school district, and I just want to thank you all so much for the warm welcome, the warm hearts, the open arms in which you all have received me. I started my job on January the 4th, and I've been in this role just for a few months. But it's been a wonderful pleasure, and it's been an exciting time for me, and I'm learning a lot about the community. And so let me talk to you a little bit about what we're going to be here doing this evening. So this evening, if you notice, we're calling these listening tours the El Paso ISD Hopes and Dreams Listening Tours. And I'm doing a listening session with each feeder pattern across the school district. So we've got 10. And tonight is the third night. I started at, where did I start? At Burgess High, at the Burgess feeder pattern on Monday. Last night we were with the Coronado feeder pattern, and tonight we're here with the Irving feeder pattern. All right, and before I get too far into this evening and the conversation that we're going to engage in together, I want to introduce two of our board members who are also here with us this evening to listen and learn as we engage in rich conversation about the future and the possibilities for El Paso ISD. So Ms. Isabel Hernandez is here, and she represents District 4. And we've got Israel Idubali here as well, and he represents District 5. You know, and I really thank the board for their support. They've supported me wonderfully as I've transitioned into my new role as superintendent and into the community. I couldn't do my job without their support. And you know, I always remind people when I introduce my board members that although they're elected officials, they do the job that they do on a volunteer basis because they do not get paid to be board members. And let me tell you, there's a lot of hours that you put in as a board member to govern a school district, especially a school district as large as El Paso ISD. So thank you so much for your support, and thank you so much for the time that you give our school district. Let's give them one more round of applause. So as I said, this evening, well, let me back up a little bit. Like I said, I just started on January the 4th, and a big part of what I've been doing the last few months, the last few weeks, is kind of instituting my entry plan. And part of my entry plan is really to listen and learn about the school district. What do I need to know about the school district so that I can develop what the reality of the school district is so that we can begin to shape the future of the school district. So I've been visiting campuses, I've been meeting with community members, I've been meeting with stakeholders inside and outside of the school district, and it's just been a pleasure. But my goal is to listen and learn, and that's a big part of what we'll do today, but I certainly want you to engage in conversation with me today as well. So, as we think about what the possibilities are for El Paso ISD, I want you to keep two terms in mind. And there's a reason why we've named or we've coined my listening tours Hopes and Dreams. So I want you to think about the definition of hope. The definition of hope is a feeling or a belief that something is possible. And so as we're engaging in our conversation today, I want you to keep that term in mind. I also want you to keep the term dream in mind, because the term dream means something that you've wanted for a very long time. And so when we think about what's possible for the El Paso Independent School District and the education we want for our children, I want you to be thinking in terms of hopes and dreams. All right? So what is this Hopes and Dreams framework about, and how is it going to help us think about the future of El Paso ISD? Well, it's really a community-based visioning framework. So what does it mean to be a community-based visioning framework? Well, when we think about the education of our children, the education of our children doesn't just happen in the confines of the school building, in the 7.5 hours that we have them in the school building. It happens inside and outside the community, and as a community, we have a collective responsibility to be part of that process. And so my hope and my intent is really to engage you as community stakeholders to help me, along with the board, begin to shape the future of our school district. Because we're all in this together. I can't hope to educate the 50,000 students of El Paso ISD single-handedly. I need your help. And so today is the first of many conversations that we'll have as we begin to shape the future. And before I get too far, I want to kind of share with you a little bit about how we structured these listening tours. So there's several of you who are sitting at tables. And again, I'm doing 10 of these, and each of them is organized by feeder pattern. So I asked each principal in the Irvin feeder pattern to identify student stakeholders, parent stakeholders, community stakeholders, teachers, non-instructional staff, so that we could generate a group of stakeholders to engage in the conversation this evening and to guarantee that we had good attendance, right? But in addition to those of you who are sitting at tables and are the pre-identified stakeholders, we also have several stakeholders who are sitting in the gallery. And you will also have an opportunity to engage in this evening's conversation. We also are live streaming this listening session, and so there's people at home that are watching via live stream, and they will also be able to engage in this conversation via live stream, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. So I shared with you community-based visioning. We all have a collective responsibility when it comes to the education of our children, so we all need to be part of visioning for the future. So as we engage together in this conversation, what's going to come out of it? Well, what's going to come out of it is we're going to learn what the priorities of the community are. And as we collect information, what we're going to start finding is that there may be information that is common across the entire school district that bubbles up from the community in terms of a priority. But what we're also going to find, because we're doing this by feeder pattern, is that there may be unique needs that we have to think about as we plan forward for each given feeder pattern. All right, so that's one of the reasons why we're doing this by feeder pattern, because I know that El Paso is a large community, and the community in Irvin is not the same as the community of Coronado or of Burgess, right? And so each community has their unique needs, so we want to be cognizant of that, and so that's why we structured this by feeder pattern. The other thing, beyond community priorities, the information that we collect will help us to begin our strategic plan and the goals of the board, all right? And we will also use this information to create what I call a learner profile, or a profile of the graduate. What do we want? When our students graduate from El Paso ISD, what profile should they have? In other words, what should they be equipped with when we send them off to be successful beyond high school, beyond El Paso ISD? So some of the work that we'll do and some of the information that we collect will also inform that information. And at the end of the day, as I said, as I continue to work collectively with the board, we'll bring all of this information back to them, and I'll work with the board to develop mission, vision, core beliefs and commitments, board goals, and like I said, that will evolve into a strategic plan. And guess what? Like I said, this is the first of many conversations. As we collect that information, we're going to bring it right back to you all so that you can provide feedback and continue to drive the conversation about what the future of El Paso ISD will look like. So, hopes and dreams and goals. So here's why it's so important to have a variety of stakeholders engaged in this conversation. Because when I think about hopes and dreams and the conversation that we'll have today, I and the board need to understand the hopes and dreams of students for their future. So students, you're here to help us understand, what do you want from your educational experience that is going to feed the future that you see for yourself? Parents, what education, what dreams, what hopes and dreams do you have for your children? Educators, what hopes and dreams do you have for your students? Each one of you who's an educator here today became an educator for a reason. And so we want that voice to be present in this conversation. Community members, as I said, we can't educate our students without the help of community leaders, without the collaboration of several community partners. So if you're here as a community partner, a community leader, or somebody who supports the feeder pattern as a whole, we want to know, what is it that you want for your neighborhoods? Because we know when we have a thriving school, we have thriving neighborhoods. So your voice is important as well. And then as we think about the district as a whole, what do we want for the future of El Paso ISD, right? So it's important for us to be thinking and having a conversation from all of those different vantage points. And that's why we have a collection of stakeholders here. So how are we going to do this evening? Each one of you, when you checked in this evening, was offered, I guess, a tablet, or we asked you to bring your phone, or we asked you to bring your computer. Because we're going to engage in a platform called Thought Exchange, and I'll explain it to you in just a minute. But as I said, there's those of you who are sitting at the tables. Again, you can use your phone, you can use the tablet that they issued you, or you can use a laptop. Those of you that are in the gallery, pull out your phones, because you can use your phones when we start engaging in this thought exchange. And those of you who are watching at home, you can engage as well with whatever technology you have at home, be that your phone, a tablet, or a computer, desktop or laptop. All right, so what is this platform that we're going to be using to have an exchange, of thoughts this evening? Well, it's a platform that allows us to share thoughts. All right, so in just a minute, when you go into the platform, I'm going to ask you to share thoughts that are associated to a question. So you'll type in your thoughts, right? Then what'll happen is that you'll be able to see the thoughts that everyone else is typing in. And you'll go in and rate that thought, whether you agree with it or you disagree with it. And you can rate it from 1 to 5. All right? And as you rate it, then some of the thoughts that have been rated the highest by the majority of stakeholders will begin to kind of rise to the top. And those begin to shape the priorities that the community and U.S. stakeholders think we should be thinking about as we begin to shape and formulate the future for El Paso ISD. It's very easy to use. It's a web format, and in just a minute, I'll show you how to get in there. And the other thing is, it's anonymous. So anybody who's thinking about, if I say something negative, they're going to be able to figure out who I am. Don't worry about that. This is an anonymous platform, and again, I'm in a position right now, I'm listening and I'm learning, so it's important for us to be candid, respectful, but candid about what we want for the future. All right? So, let me share with you, I said, I've been working my entry plan, and I've been visiting schools, I've been walking into classrooms, I've been engaging students in conversation, I've been talking to teachers, and I've been talking to a wealth of community members, all right? And so here are some of the things that I already know after engaging with the community, internal and external. I know that a big charge, a big goal for the district, and a big responsibility for me as the leader of this school district is to begin to restore the faith of the community in the school district. That's something I know. That's something that's going to be a major goal that we're going to have to accomplish. I also know that over the course of several years, our enrollment has declined. So we have got to create a future that allows us to reverse that declining enrollment. All right, what else do I know? Well, I know that our school district has been in existence for almost 140 years. We're the oldest school district in the county and in the city of El Paso. And the average age of our school buildings is 50 years old. That's a huge challenge for us to overcome. Can it be done? Yes. Is it something important for us to think about as we think about what's possible for our students in the future? Absolutely. Because we're educating our students for a world we don't even know what it's going to look like 5 years, 10 years from now, because things are progressing so rapidly. And we've got to equip our students. We've got to educate them in learning spaces that look very different than the learning spaces looked 50 years ago, right? So that's something that I know that we'll need to tackle as well. And something that I've heard from parents, I've heard it from students, and I've heard it loud and clear from our teachers, is that we have a heavy emphasis in our school district on high-stakes assessment. And so we assess our students, assessment's important, don't get me wrong, but I do believe that we over-assess our students, and that is something that has been shared with me by many. We've got to be preparing our students for more than that STAR exam. They deserve more from us, and we can't equip them unless we're doing a little bit more than that. So these are some things that I already know. So I think it's important for you all to know that I'm not blind, and these are some big things that we need to tackle. The other thing that I've done in preparation for this evening's conversation is that we've pushed out what I call a pre-listening session question. And the goal of doing that last week was so that we could acclimate people to the platform that we're going to be using tonight. And so the question that I sent out last week was, I wanted to know what are some important things that we should be having conversations about, and what do I need to know? And so as of this morning, Gustavo, how many responses do we have to that initial question? 800. So there are people that are going in to submit their thoughts about what conversations we should be having and what I need to know. All right, so that's another bank of information that I have to draw from. And as I've gone through the data that has been coming in since I pushed that question out last week, here are the things that are bubbling to the top in terms of what people think we should be talking about and what they think I need to know. Employee compensation is important. Our internal stakeholders, our employees, have been through a very difficult time for the last 2 years in response to the pandemic. We've been, they've been, pouring their hearts and souls into educating our children. And so the community, as well as our employees themselves, have articulated that it's important for us to consider fair compensation for them. And I will tell you that as a board and a superintendent, we're committed to building a budget that's balanced, but that also honors our employees and lets them know that we value them and we honor them for the hard work that they've been doing for the last 2 years and before then, right? Class size is also something that's bubbled up to the top. And at the secondary level, I think it may be not so much class size, but what we call class load. Because at the secondary level, teachers teach multiple sections. And if they have a class load anywhere from 150 to 180, that's fair. Anything over 180 is really pushing it, right? And so class load is something for us to be concerned about at the secondary level, but class size at the elementary level as well. There's some of our elementary classrooms that if they're over, depending on what grade level they're in, if they're over 25, that becomes difficult for our teachers to manage, to give them the feedback that they need to continue to learn and grow, especially at the younger ages. So class size is something that people think is important for us to discuss. Curriculum and assessment, I talked to you about that. I think curriculum needs to be written in a way that really supports a high level of engagement in the classroom, opportunities for students to dialogue in the classroom, and that guides teachers and helps them with authentic assessment, not necessarily assessment that's just geared towards high stakes testing, right? Safety and discipline, that's something that always bubbles up. And I think there's a lot wrapped up in safety and discipline. A big part of that is, elementary students want to feel safe when they go to school and they don't want to be bullied. Same thing for middle school students, right? And so that is something that weighs heavily on parents' minds. When they send their children off to school, they expect them to be safe. They certainly don't expect them to be bullied while they're at school. So those are some things that we'll need to think about. I think that we had some conversations at last evening's event where a teacher also shared that our students have dealt with a lot over the last 2 years. And they've experienced trauma just as our teachers have experienced trauma. And so our teachers need additional training so that we can address any stress and high anxiety that students may be exhibiting while they're in the classroom. Obviously, college readiness is an important thing for us to be thinking about. So a lot of people have shared that they want our students to be college ready and be ready to compete out in the real world when they leave us. And food and nutrition is something that has also been shared quite a bit in our pre-question, all right? Because we all know that, we feed our kids breakfast and we feed our kids lunch. And if our children are hungry, then they're not ready to learn. So food and nutrition is very important. We want our kids to live healthy lifestyles, and we want them to enjoy the meals that they have at school, because we want them to be nourished and ready for learning when they're in the classroom. So these are some of the thoughts that have been shared with the pre-question that was pushed out last week. Here's a kind of a word cloud of some of the terms that have been used in the shared thoughts: learning, culture, education, programs, environment, instruction. All right, so just a kind of a visual of some of the terms that are bubbling up to the top. All right, so how are we going to do this today? So at your tables, those of you who are sitting at the tables, you have a placemat, and there are 2 QR codes on the placemat. All right? And what I'm going to ask you to do is, when we get into the platform, I want you to think about, this is the question that you're going to be answering. All right? Can you go back one? As you imagine the El Paso of the future, what do you envision is possible for our students? Those are the thoughts that I want you to generate in this first thought exchange. Again, as you imagine the future of El Paso ISD, what do you envision is possible for our students? Because here's what I'm going to share with you. We can spend a lot of our time talking about what you don't like about the district, but I have a good idea about what the community doesn't like about the school district. I would rather spend the time that we have this evening really generating some thoughts about what's possible for the future, because that gives me information that I can work with and that I can use to build a strategic plan to get us there. So this is the QR code. Those of you who are live stream, you can go to tjoin.com. The number of the QR code is there so that you can engage with us and generate your thoughts. Those of you who are in the gallery, pull out your phones. You can take a picture of the QR code or type in to tjoin.com and type in the QR code. And those of you who are at the table, do the same. All right? I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to begin to generate some thoughts. All right? And this is something, I'll give you time to discuss later, but right now we need to generate thoughts. And if you need help with your technology, raise your hand and we'll have somebody help you. Yeah, or you can take a picture of your QR code. Mm-hmm. You who are live stream at home, please join us. And those of you who are in the gallery, pull out your phones. We want your thoughts just as well. And those of you who are listening, and those of you, you have a choice of typing your thoughts in English or in Spanish. So if you feel more comfortable in Spanish, there's a drop-down menu to type in Spanish. So along with entering your thoughts, when you start seeing the thoughts come through, you can also rate them from 1 to 5. So we want you entering thoughts and rating thoughts. Enter your thoughts and rate your thoughts. More than one thought. We want to capture whatever it is you're thinking. We also want you reading thoughts and rating them. thoughts and read those that are being generated and rate them. And writing your thoughts, writing the thoughts that are being generated. To rate those thoughts. We don't only want to generate thoughts, we want to go in there and read them and rate them. Got a few more minutes, and then I'll give you time to kind of talk at your tables, but we've got to continue to rate those thoughts so we can figure out which ones are bubbling to the top. And kind of a picture of how the platform works, how it begins to connect the thoughts that are being generated by those of you in the gallery, those of you that are here with me, and those of you who are live stream. All right, so at this point, I'm going to give you, I know that we've generated, if you look up at the screen, we've generated 172 thoughts, which equals close to 4,000 ratings with a ratio of 21, right? And so what are some of the thoughts that seem to be bubbling to the top? You know, any thought that gets a rating of 4 or higher is a thought that is worthy of us really paying attention to, because that means that those of you who are entering thoughts, you're collectively agreeing that these thoughts are important to you. So let's look at some of them that have been generated. That all students receive a high-quality education. Providing quality facilities that encourage student-centered learning, active engagement, and are focused on career learning pathways. Safe and harmonious school buildings. AC and heating is something that is important for us to address. Innovative programs that engage students, parents, and their involvement in their students' education. The fact that this beautiful building has been rebuilt, and the equity and what that might look like for other communities across El Paso ISD. So these are some of the things that you all have collectively generated and have said are important to you as a community. So now's your time to engage in discussion at the table. So as you've looked at some of the thoughts that have been generated, as you've rated those thoughts, talk about at your table, you know, what's really resonating with you, what's really, really important to you, and what do you think that we would need to think about if we were going to try to make these things a reality as we think about the future of El Paso ISD. So I'm going to give you some time to generate some discussion at your table at this point. And those of you in the gallery, talk to your neighbors. And those of you who are watching live stream, certainly add any additional discussion points in the chat. How are we on time? Put another minute on there. Put another minute. About 30 more seconds to discuss at your tables. All right, y'all have about 10 more seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. If I could have everybody back with me. So we've gone through our first thought exchange. I've given you a question. We collectively, with those of you who are here, those of you who are in the gallery, and those of you who are listening and watching at home, we've generated a number of thoughts, and we've rated those thoughts. I've given you an opportunity to kind of discuss at your tables, what resonated with you? What are some of the things that you discussed at your table? And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to have some of you share out what was the conversation at your table? And what are some of the things that you discussed in terms of the thoughts that were generated? And I want to start with students. So all of my students in the house, if you all could stand up and be recognized. Students, can you stand up, please? All right, can we give them all a round of applause? All right. First of all, I want to thank those students who are here. You're leaders, you're representing your community, and so I thank you for that. And I want to let you know that as a superintendent and also, in representing the board this evening, I know that we care very much about the voice of students. Because at the end of the day, you're the recipients. You're our main customer in terms of the educational system that we create. So I want to hear from students first. What can you tell me about what's possible, what you want for the future of El Paso ISD, what you want for the future of your education? Who wants to be the brave soul who starts first? Come on. Be courageous. All right, bingo, right here. All right, here we go. Here's the, will somebody help me with these? Here you go, sweetie. Give us your name, what school you're representing, and then share what you think is important for us to think about.
Hello, my name is Mia Fang. I'm from Whitaker Elementary. And one of the things that I would like was a long-term mentoring program to help the students better understand things they don't and things they could more understand, and with the teacher support that could better help them.
All right. Well, so what's important for her is teacher support, right? And that, thank you so much for sharing that, because what I'll tell, thank you. Let's give her a round of applause. She's courageous, very courageous. I appreciate that. You know, as I've shared with you that I've, been working through my entry plan, and a big part of that has been to visit schools. And when I visit schools, I don't just walk through the halls. I walk into classrooms and I engage with in conversation with students. And students have a lot to tell me about what they need and what they want from their teachers. And a big part of what they share with me is that they want support because they want to learn, they're hungry for learning, and many times they need the support of their teachers, and I know our teachers are willing to do that. So thank you so much for sharing. Who else wants to share? Raise your hand because I'm going to call on you. Yes, sir, right over here.
Hello, my name is William Fenstermacher. I'm from Trans Mountain Early College. You just came to visit our campus,
yes.
And we enjoyed having you very much, and we're glad you enjoyed our campus.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say that our campus needs some improvements. As you saw, it's just classrooms, so you don't have any hallways to walk through. It is just a classroom. That kind of ties into everything, as food and nutrition comes from a van every morning, so it's not fresh even to say. So you can't say that it's fresh food for the students. So we're also a little frustrated with that. Also, another thing, it's getting kind of hot, and in my 8th period class, it's extremely hot, and the air doesn't always work. So we would love some AC, and some heaters in the winter would be great.
All right. So what so thank you. So thank you, William. We appreciate your candidates. And what I hear from William is that facilities are important, and the learning space is important. That's what I walk away with from William's testimony, right? So it's important for us to pay attention to that, and I think that was one of the thoughts that bubbled up to the top. And I think that, again, food and nutrition, when we think about wellness for our students, food and nutrition play a big part of that. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to take 2 more comments from students. Over here. Let's get some activity over here. All right, young lady, give us your name, who you're representing, and then share what you think is possible for El Paso and what's important to you.
Hi, my name is Taia. I go here at Irvin, and I'm a senior. My group discussed project-based learning. Especially me, I really enjoyed it. It was a new way to learn, and I found it more interesting, made me want to learn more. So I think that a lot of other schools or students would be beneficial from it. But I also think support emotionally for our teachers and students is very important, because we had a rough 2 years, and we will continue to have rough years. And school is stressful, and I feel like we all need to feel supported.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I couldn't agree with you more. As I said, it's our collective responsibility to really educate our children and to listen to what they need and what they want in their classrooms. And again, project-based learning. You know, they want engaging activities, things that really resonate with them and equip them for the real world. So I appreciate that. But more importantly, you know, our students have experienced trauma, and there is a level of anxiety. And so we appreciate you bringing that to light, because our students certainly need more supports. All right, so I'll take one more student, 2. I'll take you and you, but we'll go with you first, and then we'll come right over here with you.
Hi, I'm Gabriella. I'm from Canyon Hills, and I've noticed within our school that everyone in my school really has their certain friend group, and they don't really interact with other students, and so it's kind of hard for them to interact with others out of their friend group. And when that friend group grows too big, they kind of split off. So I think we're mostly having trouble is with interacting with new people. Like once we get to know them, we're fine, but meeting new people and interacting with new people, we technically have a real hard problem with.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Gabriella, for sharing that with me. And when I think about what Gabriella has shared with us this evening, and it's middle school, correct? I think that culture is something that we need to pay attention to, because the culture that we create on a campus, if we create a culture that's warm and accepting of all, then some of that, it addresses some of that. So thank you for sharing that, Gabriella. But it's not only enough for us to focus on culture at each individual campus. We really have to look at our culture as an organization, you know, when we think about what's possible in El Paso ISD. One more comment from students, then I'm going to take 2 from teachers, and then we're going to start our second thought. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think this is on.
Yes, it's on.
It is?
Yes,
Oh.
there it is. Your
Hello.
name and where you're from.
I'm Elena Ontiveros, and I'm from Cochachi, Duran. I think we should have a therapy program for the most troubled students because they're reflecting on something that happens at home and they're reflecting it at school by bullying others, hitting them, really disrespecting people. So if they have a therapy program to express their feelings and why it's happening, I think we can have a better community at my school.
Well, thank you so much. That is such a profound statement. That is wonderful. So, what I walk away from that is that when we think about safety and security for our students, it involves social emotional supports for them and restorative discipline practices, right? Not necessarily just punitive discipline practices. So thank you very much for sharing. All right, students, you can have a seat. And who are my two brave teachers that are going to share what you want for your students and what's possible for El Paso ISD? Teachers in the house. Yes, ma'am, right here.
I can yell. I'm real sorry.
All right, here you go, Elizabeth.
For me, because I'm a special ed teacher, I want to see our special ed students graduate with life skills. Things that they take. Because I see so many end up homeless or in jail because they don't get it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. And thank you for the work that you do. The fact that you're so emotional makes me, I know that your heart is in educating our students, and thank you so much for your commitment to our students each and every day. And I would say our special education students, us having an inclusive culture is important, right? Because we all belong, and we all have a path, we all have a place, and we all have strengths. And we need to create environments where all of our students can maximize their strengths and have a future outside of our school system. So thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth. One more teacher. Yes?
William Kuhn, I'm at Canyon Hills Middle School. I would love, because we teach collaboration in our classrooms every day, teaching kids to work together to solve problems. And I would love it to see, our leaders on our campus as well as our leaders up in central office collaborate together, walk the halls of our schools to find the issues that are at our schools and then quickly solve them. I would love for our board members to come walk our halls, and that way they can see as a community member and a leader in our school district what we need to fix. We've talked about a lot of things, but it's easier to see things and then know how to fix them than just to talk about them.
Well, that is a wonderful segue, because that's going to be the next question that I'm going to ask you to think about as part of the exchange. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I opened with the understanding that it's a collective effort. It's community, it's students, it's teachers, and it's those of us who are leaders that are modeling and are leading by example. So I appreciate you sharing that. But what he said that's so important, and what we're going to shift to next, is this idea of, can you cue me up? Oops, sorry. What are some things we need to address to make these possibilities a reality? So that was a great segue to this next exchange. So you've got a second QR code on your placemat, and we're going to post it up here on the screen. Again, those of you in the gallery, take out your phones. Those of you who are live stream, it's up on the screen. We want you to engage and want you to be thinking about what are some of the things that we need to address or things that we need to do to make these possibilities a reality. The way you've got Chick-fil-A at your tables, you can eat while you work. guys are working hard. Thank you, thank you. Keep reading the thoughts and rating them. Can you switch over to the other screen, Gustavo? All right, you have about 2 more minutes. Keep rating. Can you scroll up a little bit, Gustavo? Right, you have about a minute and a half to continue rating. All right, you have about 30 more seconds. Ten seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so if I could have your attention back up here, as you all were inserting your thoughts and rating those thoughts, I was kind of scrolling through, and some of the themes that I saw in the thoughts were obviously compensation and salary is something that's rising to the top. I also saw funding and adequate resources were some things that we need to be thinking about in order to make the possibilities that we discussed earlier a reality. I saw training for teachers in there, supports and systems so that we can, for social emotional learning, clubs to help students with life skills. I think high expectations for all, not necessarily just parents, students, teachers, and community, but also district leaders and board members. So this is an opportunity, just as we did with the last exchange, for you all to have some discussion at your table about your thinking. And again, what is it that we need to do? What are some things that we need to think about in order to make what we talked about a possibility, right? So discussion at your table. Okay, we're good. You might want to, Gustavo, keep it at 3 minutes. 3. I could have you back in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so we've gone through 2 very important thought exchanges. The first was, what are the possibilities? What do we want for the future of El Paso ISD? And the second thought was really about, what do we need to do? What do we need to be thinking about to make that future a reality, right? And so that's what I want to hear as part of the discussion with the share out from the tables. And this time, I want to hear from community, I want to hear from parents, and I want to hear from the non-instructional staff that's here representing as well. So why don't we start with parents first? Parents, can you stand and be recognized so that we can give you a round of applause? Yes. Yes. You know, parents, I appreciate you very much because I know you have very difficult jobs. You work outside, you're raising families. But we appreciate your investment in this conversation, the investment that you make every day for your child's education. So thank you for being here. And I'd like to hear from 2 or 3 of you about what is it that you discuss at your table that are important things for us to do as we begin to create the future of El Paso ISD. Who wants to go first? I'll go first. All right, here we go. We need a microphone right over here. Tell us who you are and what school you're representing.
My name is Crystal Aguirre. I'm representing Sunrise Mountain. One of the things that we talked about kind of collectively as a group was that sometimes the teachers don't have the support for disruptions, behavior problems as a parent. My daughter behaves pretty well at school, so it kind of makes
we all have our moments, right?
it does make me a little bit upset when she comes home and she tells me, oh, so-and-so is misbehaving, so we didn't get to finish the full lesson. I feel that she's not getting the education that she deserves because behavioral problems can't be addressed because there's not enough support for the teachers to be able to address those issues. And it causes like a ripple effect,
right?
You know, the curriculum has to get pushed back, and I just feel like we talked about that as a whole, especially like the pandemic did cause a lot of issues for everybody,
right,
especially the students. So maybe being able to provide additional support would help.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for those thoughts and ideas. I mean, what I walk away with from those thoughts, thanks, let's give her a round of applause. You know, that it goes back to building a culture of learning in your classroom, right? And our teachers need support to be able to build that culture of learning. And we need restorative discipline practices, right? So that we can address that behavior, and not necessarily just that, but you know, address it promptly so that the learning environment is healthy. And again, we're building that culture of learning. Who else wants to? Right over here. Yes, sir. Please give us your name and what school you're representing.
Good afternoon. My name is James Denola. I am representing Irvin High School as a graduate and
Yippee!
also
All right. Give him a round of applause.
So we have a twofold thing here. After listening to all the students and all the parents discuss it, especially the teachers, I'm a strong advocate for mental health. And having social workers at the schools, not just for the students, but also for the teachers and the administration, because day to day, you all go through everything, you know, under the sun, and then most of that stuff gets transplanted to the house.
Right,
okay?
absolutely.
By allowing actual, you know, social workers, you know, MSWs on the campuses, it will provide that cognitive behavioral therapy that they need, that everybody needs. It'll also address everything that we need to take care of as far as with the mental health and the behavioral health of our students, which they can actually start focusing on those social behaviors and helping out, making friends, working on their school, taking care of their grades. The other thing too that we also talked about is allowing other nonprofit organizations that are specific to youth development. I'm a big advocate for the Scouts, you know. My son is Eagle Scout, and everything that he's learned came from when he was in kindergarten, you know. So there are a lot of life lessons that go with it, but it goes beyond that of just being an 18-year-old when you graduate. You can continue on learning that kind of stuff. And they also have programs that are also in college. So by allowing the schools to, you know, open the doors for the community, I'm also one of the officers for our American Legion. I'm also speaking as a community leader. So opening the doors for us to help out is the biggest thing because we want to help.
Right.
But it seems like every time that we reach out, we do not get our emails answered, we do not get our phone calls answered. You know, not to say that it's the district, but it's the schools themselves. So administrators, return your emails to us, okay?
Thank
Call
you
us
so
back.
much. We appreciate your feedback. And what I would share is that what I think is important and what I hear is twofold. Number one, we've got assets in the community that we need to leverage, because part of this discussion is that we have a collective responsibility to educate our children. And it's more than just academic instruction. We need a system that addresses their wellness, whether it be physical or mental or anxiety or behavioral, right? And so our community assets can really be contributors to kind of bridge the gap that we may have, because you know, we're not, we have to live within our means, and so we have limited resources, but if we leverage our assets, then we're all the better for it. So thank you so much for your thoughts and your discussion. One more parent. Yes, sir.
One of the things we talked about was basically teacher workload. How much are we putting on our teachers, and how does that transfer to our students? Also, I don't want to take too much of the teacher's time, but we talked about programs that are initiated and then pulled. Initiated and then pulled. So how much buy-in are you going to get if you have a great program and then it goes away? And then finally, as a parent, positive messaging to parents is so important. My daughter got Cobra of the Week last week, and I can't tell you how much it meant to hear something positive. Not everybody's a great athlete, not everybody's a great student, but that recognition that they're doing well, that they're liked, it matters. It builds relationships, and I think it leads to a better school.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Joseph. And I would share that some of what Joseph shared with us goes back to culture as well, right? Because again, maybe not everybody's a great athlete, but everybody has strengths, and we need to recognize those assets and the strengths that our students bring and help them to maximize that and recognize them. I think teacher workload is something that we need to think about. When we develop a system and we think about the future of El Paso ISD, we have to think about our teachers and what do we need to do to support them with that workload. And I talked about class side, I talked about student load. I know that there's been a lot of thoughts generated about professional learning, and that certainly supports teachers. So thank you so much, parents, for the comments. Community leaders, if I could have you stand and be recognized. Those of you who are community leaders and have joined us here this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, we appreciate your involvement in this conversation because we can't do it without you, and we certainly need to leverage our community assets. So what can you tell us as we've generated thoughts about the possibility of the future? What are some things that we need to be thinking about doing in terms of developing a system that's going to get us there? Well, I am.
Hi, my name is Alicia Chumley. I'm the project director for the Boys and Girls Clubs of El Paso. I oversee 5 of our after-school programs at EPISD schools.
Yay!
Hi. I think going back, you know, what you're saying, you know, like there are organizations, many organizations in El Paso that want to help the kids in El Paso, you know, and I think a lot of it comes through collaboration with the school day. We are fortunate that our 5 schools are funded through the Texas ACE grant, which is part of the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program at the federal level. But unfortunately, it's a 5-year program. So after 5 years, you know, we kind of have to adapt and kind of see, because we're a nonprofit. And so I think when we have collaboration with the schools and buy-in from the school day teachers, you know, help me help your kids after school. They're the same kids. You know, they have a lot more energy after school because you gave them the cupcakes at the end of the school day, but, you know, we're here to help. And so I think just having that collaboration and communication between the nonprofits and like the school day staff is really important.
Absolutely. And she shared something really, really important aside from collaboration and communication. She shared the fact that when we think about leveraging the assets of our community, we need to be thinking about before school and after school programming, all right? And you know, I was in Chicago. El Paso ISD was invited to go to Chicago, and I was in Chicago on Wednesday and on Thursday. And while I was in Chicago, I was with a group of superintendents from across the nation, and they shared with us some research about the benefits of after-school programming. And so absolutely, I left that discussion with the understanding that I needed to come back to El Paso, figure out What are the after-school programming, non-profit organizations that are out there? How do we leverage those assets? How do we coordinate so that, again, we invite them into the school, but we maximize those services for the benefit of our students? So thank you so much. We've got someone right over here.
Hi, my name is Christopher Acosta. I'm a Vino Nuevo pastor right across Moy Elementary off of Dyer. Basically, in listening in and hearing, I was sharing on my table, the way Northeast should be shifted in is the way we think. Because we could continue thinking and continue creating and continue writing down on paper, but once we start speaking life and speaking a difference over and empowering this generation, everything should shift. And that's why I made it a point where our church is at to speak life to the community, especially during these past 2 years. Our church was at 2 people on a Sunday, and on a really good Sunday, it went up to 12. As a matter of fact, during that time, I thought I was gonna get fired for being a pastor, but right now, we're sitting in between 500 to 600 people, where every day they get a message, they get an email, they get something of speaking life, not only for them, but for their community, for their jobs, for their families, and for their children.
Well, thank you for being here and sharing that, because our students need to be encouraged. And when he says we need to speak life into our children, that's absolutely true. And that is really maximizing their talents and really encouraging them to become the best versions of themselves. So thank you for sharing. Let me take one more from this side over here. Who wants to be, how about you, sir? Yes, sir.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Joe Molinar. I am the city representative for District 4, which is this area. Go Irvin. Anyways, my children did go to Irvin High School, and one of the two things that we talked about right now is that we must have a plan. You mentioned strategic plan earlier in your presentation, and that is also a great thing, because where are we going to go? Where, we need to have a vision for that. Second thing we talked about, which I learned tonight, is that there are many educators that opt to go into the administration field, which is fine, but I guess maybe EPISD has a policy that after only 3 years, they can choose to do that. And so that may bring some issues or problems back to the classroom for the teachers who would need to be supervised and other things like that. So I think that needs to be researched and reevaluated if that's policy.
Absolutely.
And we thank you very much, Superintendent, for doing everything you're doing for the community.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So what I would say is that absolutely, in just a minute, I'm going to be addressing what our next steps are in terms of formulating a strategic plan, because absolutely a big thing is to develop strategies and develop a plan so that we can make this possibility a reality. All right, so I think I have one more group that I need to hear from. Yes? May I say something? Yes, ma'am.
At our school, I'm Mary Beard, I'm from Stanton Elementary. One of the things that I see an improvement in when we have our social worker, we had her full-time a couple of years ago, and you could see a big improvement because she knew all the families. She was engaging with all the families, and the kids were behaving better. And then because of funding, she was cut to having to be split between 2 schools, and that's continued on. And she's getting stretched too thin because she cares too much.
Right. So funding and resources are critical for us. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Can I hear, because I know that we also have non-instructional staff here. Possibly you're representing your school as a paraprofessional, custodian, counselor. Can I have 2 of you share something from your perspective in terms of what we need to do? Non-instructional staff. Yes, ma'am. Right over here.
I'm Crystal Barton from Whitaker Elementary. I'm a paraprofessional. We were discussing technology-based in the classrooms, more training for the teachers and paras to bring that technology into the classroom. And when we do our PLCs or any kind of staff developments, bringing like new age into it, not just repetitive over and over and over again for us.
Absolutely. Well, technology, we're a one-to-one school district, so thank you so much for sharing that. We're a one-to-one school district, and so providing the appropriate training for our teachers so that we can maximize the use of technology in the classroom is important. One more comment, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. My name is Jesse Adame. I'm the head custodian to Canyon Hills Middle School. My thing is basically a lot of issues with facilities and maintenance, ma'am. The comfort of the students and our faculty. I have classrooms with no air conditioning, no heating. They're giving these little small portable units to go into the classroom with 35 students, 40 students. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable for them, the students, and the faculty and our staff.
So absolutely, including in our plan, addressing facilities and making sure that our learning spaces are conducive to learning, right? Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead, and I want to, first of all, give each one of you a round of applause. So let's just give ourselves a round of applause. You know, it's been, I've asked you to really think deeply this evening, and I appreciate you engaging in this conversation with me. We use technology to leverage and generate as many thoughts as we possibly could. We also use technology so that we could determine how many of those thoughts are people agreeing with. And then we kind of had discussions at our table and shared out some things that are really important to us. So again, I thank you for your time tonight, because I know that you have lives outside of education. So I appreciate your engagement. Thank you for those of you who are in the gallery and engaged with us, and thank you so much for those of you who are watching via live stream. And I want to kind of wrap up with two things. First of all, I want to talk about next steps. So again, I opened this evening by sharing with you that it was intentional for us to pre-identify stakeholders. And the reason is because I'm going to come back to you to continue this conversation, because we've generated thoughts about what's possible for El Paso ISD and what we'd like to see the future look like. We've talked about some things that we really need to do to be able to get there. As I go through these listening sessions over, with all of the feeder patterns, I've got 7 more to go in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to bring this information back to the board, and we will begin to collectively develop a mission, a vision, core beliefs and commitments, and board goals, which, like I said, will in turn begin to generate our strategic plan. So as we begin to generate what I call these directional documents, then I'm going to reconvene you all so that we can come back and you all can share some thoughts about whether we're on the right track, whether we've really captured the thoughts that have been generated not only by the Irvin feeder pattern, but also by the school district as a whole. All right, so you're not done yet. This is just the first of many, so I wanted to let you know that. So the conversation will continue, and we'll continue to engage the community. And I want to wrap up this evening by saying the only way that we can control the future is to create it. And I thank you for joining me this evening to help us think about the future and how we might create it for El Paso ISD so that we can educate our students in the best possible way. When I talk to students and they ask me, what's your goal as a superintendent? I tell them, my goal, my overarching goal, is to make sure that I build a system that allows you to become the best version of yourself. And when you knock on the door of opportunity, that door is open to you, and you can use your strengths and your talents to be whatever you want to be. And I say that with great passion, because I truly believe that education is the opportunity equalizer. So this is where it's at, and I appreciate you joining me this evening. I want to say thank you to several people who made this evening possible and who are making all of these listening sessions possible. First of all, those of you who are principals who lead the schools in the Irvin feeder pattern, can you stand and be recognized? And let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank you all for your leadership, and I thank you for being here to listen and to learn alongside me and to observe your community in action. I also have assistant superintendents who are here. Can you all stand and be recognized? Our executive cabinet is here as well, executive leadership at the district level. So can you all wave, stand, and be recognized? Thank you for being here. Any central office staff who's here that's joined into the conversation, wave. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And then those who made this really a reality, our community engagement department, they have done a wonderful job with the placemats, with all of the technology, with all of the signage. So we certainly appreciate them. Give them a round of applause. Yes. Our fine arts crew, who has also helped with filming and with sound. And you know what? I've been remiss the last 2 evenings because I have failed to recognize the IT department. So let's give them a real big shout out because I failed to recognize them. So, and if I have forgotten or failed to recognize you, it's not intentional by any means. But it takes a lot to put an event like this on. But I thank you all, those of you who put your hearts and souls into it, to support me in, again, listening and learning so we can build a great future for El Paso ISD. Thank you so much for engaging with me this evening. And you all have a wonderful evening.
Quick. Yes. Hello? Can I get a mic, please?
Those of you who checked out technology,
Hello.
if you can leave them on the tables.
Good evening. Have you checked